I like to say my music was my first entrepreneurial experience because I was the guy in the band that helped write. I booked all of our shows. I produced our CDs in the studio.
You're the business manager too.
Yeah, I'm the musician that was blessed and cursed to use probably both sides of his brain.
Matt Woolley Podcast.
All right, so our guest today is Brian Crowne. Thank you for being here, Mr. Crowne.
Happy to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
So let's give the people that don't know your name in Northwest Arkansas an idea of what you do, and you can add to it because I've got bullet points here. Don't know if this covers it all, but I try to summarize the best as possible. Okay, so you're a loving husband and father. You're a philanthropist, a longtime musician, owner of Georgia's Majestic, and vice president of the Walmart AMP. Have I missed anything?
I don't know how much of a philanthropist I am, other than
You've done a lot of great stuff around.
Well,
don't try to hide it.
Yeah, listen, I appreciate it. No, I think you got bullet points there in order. I start my day by being thankful for my amazing wife, my two sons, and definitely I like to say I used to be a musician, but I guess you're always a musician. So I've started in this music business a long time ago, and I'm blessed to still be involved with it and having, been in a position to help, hopefully have a positive impact on our community.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely, 100%. I don't think anybody that knows you would disagree with any of those points. Also, let's go ahead and plug Day, because she's an amazing human being, and I think she's the yin to your yang in all the years that I have known you, and amazing asset to Georgia's Majestic and all the musicians that come through there, and I think she's the more temperate of the two. Would you say that is correct?
My wife is definitely the more temperate of the two, she's awesome. It's probably 12 years ago or so. I asked her to become our marketing director at George's, and she's like, "What are you talking about? I have a degree in horticulture."
I didn't know that.
And I'm like, "Baby, we'll fake it till we make it out here." And so I got to have some help. But she's owned that space with us for a lot of years.
Yeah, I've loved the dealings we've had with Day. It's just always been amazing, and you as well. So let's get into it. So who is Brian Crowne? So where are you from? And where'd you grow up? What are those details?
It's funny. I've done a lot of interviews in the last 35 years. I don't think anybody's asked me who Brian Crowne is. I was born and raised in Fort Smith, Arkansas. Spent a year in junior high in Minneapolis. Came back to Fort Smith. I taught myself how to play saxophone in high school, and started pursuing.
Why are the good musicians self-taught, by the way?
I don't know. I wish that I'd had some lessons along the line, but I played in college for a couple years. Had to teach myself how to read music, but I got paid to play a gig many years ago. I thought I'd try music for a minute, and never really looked back. It's I knew I wasn't going to be rich and famous, but it gave me a path to make a decent living and create a lot of great relationships. But grew up in Fort Smith, spent about a year in Florida, and then in late '89 I moved to Fayetteville as a place to be home base as an artist. It was a great music scene. I was able to play with a lot of different bands, and for a regional touring artist, Fayetteville was a really good location because, you could draw a 400-mile radius around Fayetteville. There's a lot of places that you could work. So, grew up, never imagined that I would be playing music for a living or being involved in music as a living. Never imagined, owning and promoting concerts, but, good friend of mine once said, life's like water. It just kind of finds a way if you let it flow, and it's kind of cool how it takes you different directions and that you don't plan on. You think about it, water just runs and it finds a way. And so I think I'm a guy that's been blessed to be around good people.
So would you say that you're more like the flowing water? You kind of did the direction come to you, or was it a mixture of you? This is what I'm going to do for sure, or was it just a natural progression kind of thing?
I think it's the direction comes to you.
Okay.
I've told people over the years that I've been blessed to make the most of opportunity that was put in front of me. I mean, we're all offered different paths in life. So every day, the decisions you make, small medium, big decisions. It's music led me to Fayetteville. Music led me to become friends with my best friend Ben Harrison, whose family owned George's at the time. George's kind of became home base for me as a musician.
I realize there's a connection.
I met people. I toured all over the country. Told the Harrisons years ago, if you ever decide to sell George's, give me a shot. At the time I'd joke, but I'm not joking. I don't have a pot to piss in at the time, but maybe I could figure out how to make it happen. And, had opportunity when that came along, with a dear friend of ours, Susie Stevens, who facilitated the purchase in 2004. And then over the years, we bought the property and everything from her as well. But it's just, I think, life gives you opportunity and direction, and you make choices, and hopefully you make more better ones than bad ones.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk about touring, Brian, because I know you're on the road quite a bit. How many years did you do that off and on? Was it consistent, or was it
Well, it was. I wasn't necessarily on the road the whole time, but from '89 until.
Well, I know you're all over God's country, because I've heard so many people talk when your name has come up, and I think it was the one that I've heard a lot of, and maybe it's just happenstance at Oreo Blue.
Yeah, Oreo was the main regional band. I put that band together in late '90, '91 with some friends of mine. It's still going today, but from late '89 until 2006, 2007, I was still performing full time. Whether it was playing 3 days a week or going out for a couple weeks at a time. Around the country. The first couple of years that Day and I had George's, we didn't take a penny out of the club. I was still trying to create a little more cash flow there, and I was still gigging 2, 3, 4 nights a week.
Oh, wow.
And then we were fortunate to start to be able to somewhat feed ourselves out of there a little bit when we had our first kid, and that was just I made the decision then that I wanted to step away from performing.
Was that your first entrepreneur experience?
I like to say my music was my first entrepreneurial experience, because I was the guy in the band that helped write. I booked all of our shows. I produced our CDs in the studio.
You're the business manager too.
Yeah, I'm the musician that was blessed and cursed to use probably both sides of his brain. So I always tell some of the young musicians that, it's called the music business.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, literally, I'm confident to say, making a living as a musician, doing all the gigs that I had in the band, it was an entrepreneurial thing for me. It was like, can I work for myself? And I bought a house, bought a car, bought a boat. I wasn't making a ton of money, but I like to say, hell, if you're making a living doing something you love, you're successful.
Absolutely. So things are starting to make sense to me that I never really understood, and I'm glad you brought that out, because there is a difference between being the guy that just puts on an instrument or hooks up to a mic, and the guy that actually does both, who's in charge of marketing, in charge of the bookings, in charge of. Now, you get it. I don't have to explain that to you. But I've been on that side, too, obviously. So now I start to understand why you sympathize with the guys that have to do that.
Well, I don't know if I sympathize with them.
Well, you get them.
But I get them, and I appreciate them. And honestly, when I meet folks like that, for whatever reason, it makes me want to work harder for them. I want to try to help them win. But I also really appreciate the artists that are just artists. Sometimes I kind of envy some of those folks. It's just to be a creative and not have to worry about all this other stuff. But at the same time, being the guy that got to worry about all the other stuff, I was able to hopefully ensure that I wouldn't worry about making my mortgage.
All right. So let's talk about your career path. Let's back up a little bit. Obviously, you're the working musician. What other things did Brian do before he was the working musician? What was the core of, anything and everything that you did?
Yeah, man, anything and everything. My first job in high school was flipping burgers at Wendy's. I worked at a small hardware store in Fort Smith. I delivered pianos and did guitar repair at Sigler's in Fort Smith for a year.
Oh, really?
I detailed cars. It's it's just learned a lot though. I enjoyed the gig delivering pianos, but learning how to do guitar repair and work at a music store was pretty interesting. I was 18, 19 years old and in really good shape then. But it was just whatever the gig was,
So when did you decide I'm going full bore on the musician thing?
I mean, literally, what is University of Arkansas Fort Smith now was West Ark at the time. It was a 2-year college. I remember meeting the band director, Dr. Ray, at the time, and I told him, I said, I don't really read music, but I think I can play okay. And he put a record on. He says, "Send the key of G kid jam for me," and he ended up giving me a full ride to go to college.
Dude, that's epic. And that feel good.
Well, listen, it was humbling. It was neat, but I had to go back and teach myself. But fast forward to when I joke, and I not so much joke, that I got paid to play a couple of gigs in some bands, and at the time, I mean, young and dumb, you don't know any better. I thought, this late 80s, I thought, I want to play music. I'm going to try it for a little while, and knew that I wasn't going to be the front man, but I felt like I could be a solid utility guy in a band, playing rhythm guitar and saxophone, singing a little bit of backup. So I just made a decision to give it a chance. And I like to say both my kids won't have that same chance because I'll make them do something else.
You know better.
I said, I'm not going to curse them with that, but no, they're...
Both your kids musicians?
Yeah, they found music on their own, but yeah,
That's great.
My oldest is finishing his freshman year in college, and he plays guitar. My 16-year-old, he's going to be 16 in a couple weeks, just a monster bass player and guitar player, but they found it on their own. They do really well. It's something I don't push them at, but answering your question is, I think I made a conscious decision while I was young and single. I just want to try music and see, where it takes me, and just kind of one year turned into another year, and all of a sudden it's like, well, what else am I going to do? I'm at least eating and paying my bills, and I would tell people for years, and I still feel this way, my worst day on stage was better than my best day at any day job I had during that time.
Oh, I love that. Yeah.
And so I made a decision to try it and just never look back.
That's awesome. Okay, so let's get into the genetic music code of Brian's Crowne. So every player has people that have inspired them. Who were the guys that inspired Brian Crowne?
Well, you may laugh. I still remember being in 8th grade in another lifetime, because I'm the old guy in this studio, and seeing the movie The Blues Brothers for the first time.
I love the blues. Wait just a second. I love the blues.
Well, there's a lot of people that love the Blues Brothers. See, but I just say that I was intrigued by that music. I was intrigued by. I really enjoyed the 60s soul, the R&B, the blues influence and stuff like that. And it took a couple of years, until I was just 10th grade that, I thought, I want to try to, I met a buddy of mine at church, played guitar, and I thought, well, I always want to play saxophone, so I'll try that. And But the Blues Brothers probably first got me intrigued. And so I remember, getting one of their albums called Briefcase Full of Blues, where they always did covers. And they did this song by Delbert McClinton. They did this song by so-and-so, and I would go back and research those cats and find their music. And so the Blues Brothers, Delbert McClinton, which is, Texas R&B, soul, those are the guys that probably influenced me early on and kind of got me interested in music, because it was just fun. So that's probably some of my early inspirations.
What did that lead to?
Well, I guess it led to me hopefully feeling that if I became a musician, I would have a little bit of soul in me, as far as wanting to help people feel what I was playing musically. It wasn't ever about wowing people with my technical ability, but as I did it more, I'd research other musicians, and different saxophone players. I really, I was a rock and roll saxophone player. I wasn't a jazz guy. I mean, I enjoy jazz, okay, but I remember my buddy that was that guitar player, Brian Martin. When we went to church together, his dad had this whole Dwayne Eddy album, who actually just passed away last week, called Twangin' Gold. And it was this old honky-tonk stuff, with the real raspy tenor.
Oh, yeah, man.
And fast forward to many years later, I was playing with a band in 1990 called Pumpkinhead. It was a pretty successful funk band in Fayetteville.
Dude, you were in Pumpkinhead?
I was with them for a little bit while we were blue together. And I believe they'd signed a demo deal with Elektra Records. And they sent a producer in to work with us for a couple of weeks before they took us to the studio. And I still remember this guy named Paul Ebersol goes, man, there's this one other guy I've worked with that has the same kind of tenor tone as you. His name is Jim Horn. And I thought, that's interesting. So I went back, who's Jim Horn? I thought, well, crap, he played with Del Clinton. He played with Dwayne Eddy and all these cats. And I didn't realize how much he'd influenced me. And a fun story is fast forward to 2018, I'm at Walmart Amp, and we're hosting Leonard Skinner for the first of their 6-year, farewell tour. And I heard the radio go off, and they said, there's a guest at the back gate there with Jim Horn. And I thought, there's no way. And I never try to meet bands because we're always working, but I went backstage and I found the tour manager. Is that Jim Horn, saxophone player? He goes, yeah. I got to meet this cat.
That's awesome.
And so all these years later, I got to meet Jim Horn, this guy that had influenced my style so much. And it was funny. I told him the story, and he introduced me to his wife that was with him. If you look up Jim Horn, it's more of a, who is he not played with on the planet?
That's awesome.
He's that guy. But I remember it was funny. He told his wife, he goes, this is Brian. He goes, and I'm his favorite saxophone player. I said, you're not my favorite, Jim, but you influenced me the most. So anyway, and Matt, you'll find that I tend to give long, rambling answers to questions.
Oh no, that's what we're here for.
Anyway. You took me down a fun trip of memory.
Well, that's what we're here on. That's what we're here on. Wow. So like 300 questions are just popping in my head, and I'm trying not to interrupt you.
Interrupt me. It's okay.
Okay. So, let's make the transition here. Let's talk for a minute about, actually, no, I don't want to do that yet. I'm going to ask you another question. All right. So you list two people who influenced you, who you were influenced by. So who today? Can you name anybody modernly that you or, in the past, let's say 20 years that you've just admired?
Man, there's been so many people that I've admired. It's tough. It's like a question I get asked a lot. It's like, what's your favorite concert you've done in the last 20 years? It's hard because I've liked so many of them for so many reasons. Obviously people haven't influenced me musically so much because I've not been playing for a living for so many years now because I've went to a...
You still play, though?
I still noodle around a little bit. I haven't been on stage since 2020, but I'm actually... probably going to try to sit in with Oriole Blue in November for a Friday matinee show at Georgia's during football season. But there's artists that have struck me over the years, and there's so much great talent in all these different genres, and there's different tastes. So what's inspired me may fall tone deaf to somebody, but I go back to what made me want to play music to start with. It was the Blues Brothers. It was the Otis Reddings, the Wilson Pickett's, the soul R&B stuff that I loved. It was just so simple, but it was so moving. So I think about artists that do some of that stuff. We were just talking about one earlier here before we came in here, Nathaniel Rateliff, who I said is kind of like this generation's Van Morrison to, J.J. Gray and Melfro was one of my favorite touring artists out of Florida. I just did him at Victory Theater in downtown Rogers back in March. Soul-inspired musicians. My favorite horn band on the planet still is Tower of Power out of Oakland. Just the tightest horn section on the planet. So, there's things that resonate with me, but there's also been music that I've been exposed to that's moved me in different ways. I still, go into a different perspective and seat. When I still remember having Tim McGraw at Walmart Amp in 2014, and
I still know people that talk about that show.
And what was cool for me is, I've got a different perspective of it, opening a building, hosting it. But the musician and the fan of me still remembers watching some of that show from front of house. And he's had, at the time, like 38 number one hits. And he played it like it was his first time to ever be in front of a sold out show. And it wasn't fake. And that true just appreciation that some incredibly successful artists have for still soaking up being in front of their fans and giving everything they got resonates with me. You got it with Tim McGraw. It's kind of like, just different, but like seeing Garth Brooks at Razorback Stadium a few years ago. Watching some guy take 85,000 people and put them in the palm of their hand. You don't got to love every song the dude plays, but
dang, respect it. Yeah.
Well, you respect it. It kind of inspires you. I think people that inspire people inspire me.
That's awesome. That's a great answer. Okay, so let's transition to your moving into Georgia's. So you told me that the previous owners, you said, hey, keep me in mind when the time comes. So I'm assuming that time came. How did that come about? And tell me about, the experience you had in that, like both emotionally and, from the business standpoint too, what was that like?
Yeah, it was summer or fall of 2003. The Harrison said, we want to sell, and, do you think you can do something here? And like I said at the time, Day and I, one of my dearest friends, like a second mom to me, a lady named Susie Stevens, who I'd met when she was a drummer in another band many years ago, had the financial wherewithal to facilitate the purchase. And I still remember telling Susie, I don't know if we can make it go. Music is what I know. It's what we're going to try. I said, but if we don't make it go, you shouldn't lose any money on the dirt. And Day and I bought the business when we first came out, and then transitioned and bought the property some years later to acquire it all. But I will joke, and not so much joke, that if I'd have known what it took to really keep a business going, make a mortgage at that level, and everything else that goes with it, I might have been too scared to do it. So naively, I dove off into, hey, we can own a venue and make a payroll and blah 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 blah. And it's kind of interesting. I think a fear of failure has motivated me all these years, and not from an egotistical standpoint. It's just all of a sudden you realize people count on you.
Survival.
Well, it's survival, but
you and everybody else.
But the people are looking to me.
Yeah.
So we just the transition happened. I made up something and said, I've got a 2 to 5 year plan, and I think we could maybe do well with it and flip it or something. And we're going into year 20 now. Mm-hmm. So much for that. I could only know what it was. But, I think I made a jump to try to play music for a living. I was fortunate, going back to what we talked about earlier, an opportunity was put in front of my wife and me to, let's take a chance. Mm-hmm. And, worst case scenario is, hopefully we don't lose money for people that are involved. And if we are blessed to be okay with it, that, it can be a good investment for ourselves and our, obviously for our community. And, getting George's is something too. I had so much history with it from playing there and my buddy running it for years, and to knowing that a venue that's so ingrained in multiple generations in a community, I've kind of felt like Day and I are the curators as our time as owners. We're the fourth owners in 97 years. Mm-hmm. So that piece of it wasn't something that we took lightly either. Mm-hmm. But, it was an opportunity. You transition, you try, you fail, you try, you win, and hopefully you start making less mistakes. And I look back now, and it's been a real blessing. And and it's still a grind, but hey, any gig and any relationship's a grind. You got to work on it.
Oh yeah, you never stop. Okay, so first I have to say this piece. My terminology, whether it's good or bad, I refer to different people in different industries, especially in this areas, godfathers, and I call you the godfather of the music scene, and I think that you have done so much for the music scene in the time that you've been at George's. I could say for a guy that lived his life on Dixon Street for many years, not so much now, but I remember back in the days of. So when I came up here in 2002,
okay,
and I remember when I landed, there was Dave's on Dixon, which was petering out. And no slander to them. It just was.
It was a transition at the time of the business.
And then hot popping place was the Gypsy, and then George's started making some moves. And I can clearly remember the transitioning happening from, it seemed like where things were going on these other places, all of a sudden it became, it was happening at George's, and George's was the spot. And then y'all did, I think, your first renovation of it to kind of get it, because it didn't look, it wasn't the same George's that it always has been. You guys have, over the years, have done different things to the building, and I'm proud to be a part of some of those things or to see them firsthand. But I definitely remember all of a sudden there was a different talent base coming through, and also too, while that was going on, you were also facilitating a lot of room, and I was one of them, in early local bands. Like you always you had, national acts coming through, notable people, but you're also allowing opportunities for young guys to, come on up and get their feet wet, in a good notable place. So my question to you in saying all that is it because, what's your take on the local music scene and the importance of musicians and being a facilitator for that? What was the ideation behind it, or was there any at all?
It'll take a little bit to unpack.
That's all right. Let's do it.
I'll start with thank you. I'm flattered at, the acknowledgement, and if you want to call me the godfather of the music scene, I'll kind of chuckle, but I've been accused of being that, but I would say I was kind of by default kind of became that because I was the only person for a lot of years, I think, doing it to scale and to volume that we did in the market. So it wasn't that I was trying to squeeze anybody out. I was just, you remember those days.
No.
That's all I had to. One of my goals for George's was it already had history and pedigree, but I wanted to establish it as a premier showcase venue for this region of the country. And to do that, I had to up the ante on production quality that was in the building. I had to add national talent that was touring through there on a regular basis. And if I did that, I had a foundation to be able to go back to those local artists that you're talking about and give them a place that they hopefully aspired to play. Not because it was mine and my wife's, because it was George's. There were venues around the country that I remember when I was first starting out. It's like, man, if I can just get a gig there, it's going to look good on my resume. It helps me get these other 10 gigs because that's a big thing. So we really focused on that in the early days. And I still remember I knew that Dave's on Dixon was probably going to be, transitioning. And I called Dave Bass, who he and I are still, I consider to be a friend, and said, hey, we're getting George's. I just want to let you know that I'm going to try to go after some of these bands. And, I want to be as collaborative as we can. At least that's my recollection. And, I guess it worked because he and I are still, on good terms. But was to establish George's historically, but also making it relevant for that time frame in this generation. And if it became a place where touring artists wanted to land, and we became known as that place, it made it a cooler place for you as a young artist to come and play, whether it's the front room or the back room. I've always wanted to give opportunity to young artists that are trying and working hard, and then even if they don't know how to promote themselves, if they want it and they want to learn, we still to this day we try to offer free professional development, and it's not just all philanthropic. It's a little bit self-serving because I gotta find the next crop of artists. They're gonna have 20 friends that become fans that turn into 200 fans, and we grow the business together and we keep it going. So it was definitely a strategic plan that I had, and it wasn't all defined back then by any means, other than, we have to have this mixture of genres, this mixture of local, regional, national, just to be able to pay the bills to start with. If we can pay the bills monthly, we can figure out how to grow it. So I probably lost some of your question, but that's what the focus was back then. And so it's still turned into that, what it is today, and having, over the years, having received, not me, but the venue, some really amazing national accolades that I still scratch my head and go, really? How'd you even hear about us? But it's really kind of cool, though. Absolutely. I remember being in Nashville some years ago, and I was at this hoity-toity restaurant that an agent took me to that he wanted to show me, and he wanted me to meet the general manager of this restaurant. This is the crap you can't make up. And he goes, hey, you got to meet Brian. My bands play his club in Arkansas. And he says, George's, and the dude, and the guy goes from being formal to saying, dude, George's. I used to tee in with this rock band. We used to come through there. We love that place, blah, 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 blah. And me and the agent just chuckled. And it was kind of funny, over the years, we became known. And that's something I'm really proud of. But it's also something I'm proud of for our community, because it puts the community on the map. I kind of think some of that cachet hopefully parlayed into helping some other things we've been involved in musically to get some buy-in. But it goes back to, what you asked me, what do I think about, I think you said, what about the music scene now? Yeah, I've said this, and I believe it still since I moved to Fayetteville in late 89, that Northwest Arkansas per cap has as many talented musicians, singers, and songwriters than any music city in the country.
Amen.
That hasn't changed in my mind. There's a reality of having a good music scene and having a music scene that is viable from an economic standpoint, business-wise. There's some great young bands that are still having to figure out how to sell tickets or figuring out the right balance of free shows and ticketed shows and how to become a viable business that I can invest in by giving them premium nights to, because the reality I have is I've got to pay bills, you've got to pay bills. And I think that part of the scene is cyclical over the years, and I've seen it for 35 years, kind of go up and down. I think we're chock full of talent right now. And we're also, as a country and as a region, there's so much content available in so many different areas, whether it's mini festivals or concerts or other venues, which are all part of the ecosystem and are important. I kind of think we're going through a time of evolution in the music scene, if that makes sense. So one of the things that still intrigues me is trying to learn what the new reality of the industry is almost on a daily basis, if you're paying attention. I mean, the way artists can take their music to market these days, it's crazy. I mean, I think Noah Khan, let's say, I was chasing him for a club show 3 years ago because one of my interns, or one of our ambassadors, said, you should check out Noah Khan. He was just popping on TikTok. Blew past George's, tried to get him at the AMP last year. He's doing stadiums this year.
That's crazy.
I mean, that's an example, though,
with the ease of digital, people have surpassed years of on the road work.
Really,
and on top of it too, and tell me if you disagree, but like just the ability to not only get the music out there, but also to show make their own music videos and stuff like that. People are doing this all the time. The technology's there to actually. I remember even just a few years back, whenever I was doing the original scene, the thought of recording our own music, under something like Logic was, that was just a dream. And the same thing, these guys are cutting albums on their own, and then they're also, hooking up with some friends and creating truly music videos that, go head to head with some of the things that people are seeing on a professional level. It's crazy.
Oh yeah. So that all goes back to your question about the local music scene. I think we have a great local music scene. There's different realities of where people are at in the ecosystem, and I don't mean that to put people in a place or anything like that, but you got to start off at a coffee shop or a free show or something like that, work your way up, get the gigs, community gigs, whatever, make fans. But there's so many ways now, and we tell young artists that you don't have to go burn it up on the road, or you don't have to go play 100 gigs to get fans. Explore all these other opportunities. And so for me, going back to kind of understanding the new reality of the local scene and the music business on a regular basis, we're constantly trying to digest that. But I think we have a vibrant music scene, and there's more venues and more opportunities for artists to work, which I think is great for this region. And so a long answer to a short question. Focused on George's 20 years ago to establish it as a showcase venue that people aspire to play. And when I look around now, I mean, there's like there should be. There's tons of young talent coming up the pipeline.
Is that a consistent, or do you see things in waves as far as the local music scene? Because maybe I just wasn't plugged in, but in the younger days, being a part of the scene, I always tried to support local guys, and then I was a local guy, and then, but is it always a consistent? Are you always seeing local? Are there heavier times than others over the years? The reason why I ask that selfishly, because outside looking in, it feels that way. But am I off base?
Once again, there's so many perspectives to answer that question from. So I'll answer it from my perspective as a guy that's in what I call the hard ticket business. We open George's only when we have a concert or special event. So I open and close a business every day. I turn the key on the door. So I have to have a partner in that band or that artist that's going to bring business in our business, so we both have business. So some people look at that and think it can be cynical, but it's my reality. If so, I think it's cyclical. That sometimes it's more flush than other times. I think the talent level is always there, but it's like, it's one thing to do 100 people at a free gig across the street from me or somewhere, but you can't come to me 2 weeks later and ask for $10 tickets on a Friday night and expect to play the big room.
Yeah, absolutely. But you get that a lot, though.
Well, dude, I get it all. And it's like, honestly, the front room at George's is small, what I call the lounge. It's still one of my favorite stages in the country that I love playing. It sounds great. But, it's like, I'm not answering your question, but I'm just going to say this because I need to. I tell young artists or even touring artists that come through, had a great show the other night. It was a great show in every way, but financially Monday night, we lost money, but it's a band I'll have back. And it's like, do you want to play the back room to 90 people or do you want to play the front room to 90 people? Mm-hmm. And you know what it is as a musician.
Oh yeah.
You're probably going to say, I want that front room and have that energy, but you got to build it.
Yeah.
And some bands don't get it. And I always say, hey, don't let your ego get in the way of which room you think's the right space for your ego, man. Play the room that's right for you. And I think if you kind of have that mentality, you're going to stay hungry and produce.
And that's good mentoring.
Well, and some people either choose to listen to you or they choose to blow you off, and it is what it is. But, for the most part, I don't shove that down anybody's throat, but it's like, you can make the call.
Mm-hmm. This episode of the podcast is brought to you by Design Steins. Since 2010, Design Steins has assisted brands and suppliers with branding, packaging, displays, engineering, photography, video, and trade shows for retail. Design Steins provides your brands with the retail power to make the sell. Go to designsteins.com, that's DESIGNSTEINS.com, to learn how they can help your brands go next level. Designsteins.com. Your brands, your goals, your success. This podcast is brought to you by the Grove Comedy Club in Northwest Arkansas. The Grove Comedy Club is Northwest Arkansas's premium spot for national comedic acts all year long. Go to grovecomedy.com, get your tickets, then come grab a beer, grab some food, and get ready to laugh. And remember, comedy is at the Grove. This podcast is brought to you by George's Majestic Lounge in Fayetteville. George's Majestic Lounge is the longest-running club and live music venue in the state of Arkansas. George's Majestic regularly features national acts and is listed as one of the top 100 greatest American music venues in the United States. If you're looking for a great time in live music, head over to georgesmajesticlounge.com and get your tickets today. George's Majestic Lounge, where live music lives. I was thinking about this morning. Just a little side note. I have to tell two stories about you.
Oh, boy.
And I have to also give you some props, too. But do you realize that I've known you for 18 years?
I knew it was getting close to 18 or 20. So
that's crazy. So here's the funny story, and let me actually, before I tell the funny story, I want to tell you this one. So, number one, on behalf of myself and all the other musicians that come here, I want to say thank you for giving people an opportunity, because that's what musicians, especially young musicians, need. They just need an opportunity. And I remember, this is a good segue, but I remember back in the day, I give credit to you. This is when I was in an original band called Calling Tokyo. Not my best musical thing ever, but it was fun. But you allowed us to, try out, the front room, and then you gave me some advice on it, and I also give credit to Uncle Steve, God rest his soul, from 104.9 for giving me free advertising.
Steve Butler.
Yeah, Steve Butler. Yeah, he was
a character.
Yeah, it's completely. Yeah. But I give him credit too. So here's what I quickly learned. It was just like, okay, so I always realized it was a business. I had my background was banking, but long before I did Design Steins, and so after our first go around, I was like, okay, if he's gonna have his back, we're gonna have to figure out a way to at least try to make him some money. And so if I don't know if you remember doing this, but do you remember like the Rock Mayhems? Yeah. And so this was long before Ruben was packing people in. But I decided, I was like, here's what, and your sound guys hated me.
Because you probably came in with 7 bands.
There's 3 bands on each stage. 3 bands on. I was like, but it created a family. I got together. I just put myself out there, talked to a bunch of local bands that I thought collectively, we're all, bringing peanuts in, but if we all were able to combine together, we can do something.
Yep.
And I thought, there's no way he's going to approve this. But I came to you with the idea, and you're like, you paused for a second, you're like, what the hell, let's do it. And I was like, all right, let's do it. And so, I started getting things in order, and then I went and talked to Steve Butler, and he's like, Matt, we're going to help you out. And I was like, oh, thank God. Just, I got to get the word out how we can, right? And then, I'll never forget, now this is the funny story. So I was so paranoid about this show that I felt like I got to stay on top of everything. I got to let Mr. Crowne know, blah, blah, blah. And so I can't remember what this detail was. It was probably something stupid. But, at the time, man, I was, 25 or 26, maybe. And I kept emailing you, and I kept calling you. You probably remember. And I'm sure you were busy with something, but I probably emailed you and called you like 6 times a piece. And finally, I got an email. Matt, I will get back to you, like all in big letters, exclamation marks. Like, okay, Mr. Crowne's going to get back to me. I could tell I pissed you off. And I just took it back. It's like, okay, he knows I'm trying to get a hold of him. But that's when I had to it was a learning lesson. I had to put myself in check. And you had every right to do that, let me say. But because I know you had a lot of things going on. But I'll never forget that email. I was like, whoa, okay, he's going to get back to me. And so
I hope I did.
You did. You did get back to me. You've always been a great communicator with me. I've been fortunate in all the stuff that we've been a part of over the years together, that you've always been really, really good to us. And then the second more fond memory was, obviously, the 10 years of doing Hot Licks, right? Hot Licks was it was a real blessing for me and the other guys involved in the band. But I remember we had played a show, because honestly, I didn't think we were going to do anything. I thought, who is going to, buy into this? And our first show was unfortunately at, what was the name of the place? It was the third iteration of what was after the Gypsy, changed hands a lot. I can't remember what it was.
But I know what you're talking about.
And so it was Froggy's and then something else. That's all I remember. But whatever the case, I was going to remix. I think that was it. But anyways, I was going to reach out to you because, like, okay, some people showed up to this one. I was going to reach out to you. And then literally it was like the stars aligned, because the day I was going to give you a call, you sent an email and said, hey, why don't you think about bringing because I guess you got word from somebody or something, why don't you think about bringing Hot Licks over here? And I was like, I was on cloud 9. And then I remember a second fond memory in that same setup, we decided to put tickets out there, and I was worried nobody's going to show up. And I remember calling you, and I was like, hey, I know we're playing, the lounge. I was like, but I'm thinking we might have more. And you just said, don't worry about it. We'll open that back up if we need to. And that was, ever since it, for 10 years, it was just a blessing. And we always loved George's. And we also got to see transitions from whenever you guys went from the old, I don't know if it's the oldest stage, but the old stage to when you
tiny garage that that big stage house.
Dude, it was epic. I remember stepping out on that and thinking, this is awesome. It was in the lighting systems. You've constantly improved the place.
We've tried to maintain relevance in those investments, and I appreciate you saying that about, that was an investment in the artist experience and the patron experience. But I appreciate you sharing the story. I mean, and your show, the Hot Licks, were a blessing to us as well. I mean, working with good people that put on a good show, that bring in good business, the Georgia staff appreciates it. Truly is a partnership.
And you have the best staff, by the way.
Listen, I appreciate it. They're great folks, and they've learned to deal with my crazy over the years. And I'm like, hey, every once in a while we're going to do 5 things in one day, because it's feast or famine. Mm-hmm. But it was fun doing those are fun times and growing together, and occasionally I've had a few of the bands that don't play very often that, do reunion gigs, and it's fun. But I appreciate you talking about the big room change, because when we built that stage house in 2011, we opened it up New Year's Eve, I think, maybe with the Kate Brothers or something in 2012, and that was a big old chunk of change for small business people like us, but it was knew that we needed to do that to kind of hopefully invest in a consistent experience for the artists and the patrons to always get that concert level experience, because we had kind of evolved and grown. But yeah, that's fun going down memory lane there with you on that, and thinking about Steve and one of the great characters we had in Fayetteville that did a lot of good with his radio station and stuff, and supported a lot of music. And
but both of you have done you've done so much for the community and the local music community that I don't think that people truly understand, and that you always get the you're kind of the unsung hero in a lot of ways.
And I've always some people might be surprised. I've just, I've always been the guy that's wanted to keep my head down and do. I wanted to just do. And, it's not always about, raising my hand going, look at what I've done. It's more about, hey, I appreciate the opportunity I've had. And, if you see the fruits of a collective labor, then, it's not just me. It's good people around me. And, but, I guess I've always been the guy driving the bus that it's kind of like, we can figure this crap out. We can do this. And,
in your history, what was the greatest challenge that George's Majestic ever came up?
Well, that's a hell of a question there. If I come up with one while I'm rambling here for a second, I will zero in for you. But, I think I don't want to necessarily call it a challenge in a bad way. I think it's a good thing when you wake up every day knowing that you need to nurture something. And, whether it's your relationship with your friends, with your significant other, wife, husband, whoever, I still remember giving an interview right before COVID and everything shutting down. And somebody asked me, what do you want for George's for the next blah, blah, blah? And it was immediate. It was irrelevance, and I think legacy venues have a daily challenge of how do they maintain relevance. You get people that have known you've been there forever, just assume you're always going to be there. They may not patronize it as much as they used to. Maintaining relevance for, attracting young local artists, touring artists. I think that's an ongoing challenge, but it's one that, I take as a good thing. Even the days when, I think, boy, I might just want to turn the key on this place because it's a grind. But, you got a responsibility. I literally think maintaining relevance is a big challenge with a legacy institution. Golly, that's a great question. I wish I could just say, there was that one night, I can tell stories. There was that one night when we had sold out shows and the sewer backed up and we had 3 inches of water.
Did it happen?
Oh yeah, it happened.
I'm like that.
Or, first time I had Robert Cray in the old open air beer garden and a tornado came through and there was hail blowing on everybody. And I'm on the roof trying to put these covers back on. I don't know how I didn't die. He didn't quit playing. Yeah. I could bore you with 100 stories of wild ass, you can't believe that happened, or wow, everybody survived. But
do you have a favorite story?
No, man, there's
too many.
It'd be too many. But I can say there's a very short list of artists I don't want to work with, and I'm happy to share that with you off the air sometime. But for the most part, I've been blessed to work with some really neat folks. But it's a great question, and I promise you, Matt, if I think of a certain challenge,
hopefully this won't be the last time you come on.
Well, I hope not either. Listen, these are fun chats, and I'm happy to come back or bring somebody else. But I will say it could personally challenging. I would say closing for 134 days in 2020 with the pandemic.
It's tough.
The reality of if you were in the music business, if you were in the business of gathering people in March of 2020 globally, everything shut down. Right, wrong, or indifferent, that's the reality that ruled the world for months. And, we closed because of what we had to do at the time. Reality was people weren't going to come out. You couldn't find bands to come to work. And as a small business, you look at that and you go, first thing I did was, okay, how much money is in the bank? What's our burn rate every month, whether we're open or not? How long do we have before something really bad is going to happen financially? And, 2 weeks into the pandemic, you see stories around the country, GoFundMe to pay our rent, GoFundMe this, and I felt my heart broke for those people. But I thought, man, I thank God, Day and I aren't fat and happy here, but we've been conservative all these years and didn't have to live out of the cash register. We've saved at least enough money that we got a little bit of a runway here. Yeah. But that reality of not knowing when you're going to open again, will people come back? I would say personally that was a challenge, but it was also kind of one of those things. I still remember, my God, I went from, 200 emails a day to nothing and twiddling my thumbs going, I can only mow the grass so many times, and Dave's going to throw me out of the house to just wanting that business back. I want to take care of people and slowly coming back. So, changing the marquee every week just so people knew we had a pulse and we weren't going to go away. Some stuff people noticed, some people didn't. So I could say personally and emotionally, that was probably one of the toughest things that I've ever gone through, but I'm very thankful that we survived. And, I still remember our first tour bus back was Riley Green in May of 21. I remember Day and I
had to feel good.
Oh, good Lord, Day and I teared up.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Praise God, we're still here, right?
Shoot, yeah, buddy.
All right. Well, last question of the day, Mr. Crowne, because we're running out of time. What brings Brian Crowne joy?
That's a great question and an easy answer. I will start with things I've been saying for years is I wake up every day saying I thank God that my wife still puts up with me and my kids are healthy. And I'm blessed to make a living doing something that I enjoy that has such a positive impact on people. And that may sound kind of cliche or easy, but it really is that true for me. The rest of the stuff is gravy, man. It brings me joy to bring joy to people. I loved my years on stage, not from an ego standpoint, but it was just so much fun to be that cat that got to help put a smile on somebody's face. I know that you can relate with that.
Absolutely.
That escape from reality that we give people for 2 hours of their life.
Everybody needs that too.
You do need it, dude. And that became even more apparent during COVID. That's part of our holistic health, but that continues to bring me joy. I flipped a page in a chapter of my life, and I went from being on stage to the guy that puts people on stage. But I've always enjoyed the same thing. It's gratifying. So my wife would probably tell you work is my hobby. She's told me that if I talk about retirement, I have to have at least 4 full-time hobbies, or she won't let me. It's man, do simple things. Definitely. I'm blessed to have 2 amazing boys and a wonderful, beautiful wife that's my friend and partner. And if I can be part of keeping that together, man, all this other crap will take care of itself.
That's awesome. Well, Brian, thank you so much for being here.
Well, thanks for asking me, dude. Appreciate it.
Pleasure as always.
Yeah, didn't know what to expect, but I always enjoy a good conversation. My wife will still tell you have to shy away from the microphone.
Well, again, I'll talk to a tree if I think it's listening. And I'm blessed to know a lot of others that do the same and have great stories, so thank you for sharing them.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me in.